VAT. And I am looking at the time and I am recognizing the fact that we're going to have lots of different issues. So this was the question. Okay. Long story short, if we are dealing with services, okay, then first things first, this is never going to be exempt. And it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, but it's something where we do need to be a little bit careful with our terminology, is because remember, an exempt supply is a supply which falls outside of the VAT scope. It falls outside of the scope of VAT, so it's not a VATable event. So if something is an exempt supply, there's no VAT charge on it, but it also means you can't claim any input VAT related to it. Contrast that to a zero-rated supply, which is still a taxable supply, and I can claim input VAT related to the expenses thereon. Okay, so please just be very careful when you're looking at your terminology. And yes, this is my academic pedant hat on, and I will stick with this because I do think it actually makes an understanding difference. Technically, on the face of it, exempt and zero-rated supplies look the same because they both result in no tax payable. But if it's exempt, it falls outside of scope of VAT, no input VAT. If it's zero-rated, still no VAT raised, but you can claim input VAT related to the services. Okay, so the question actually should be, can I zero-rate the supply? Right. So the short answer is that more than likely you're going to be trying to zero-rate this in terms of Section 11.2L. And Section 11.2L basically says a supply of services shall be charged with tax at a rate of 0% where the services are supplied to a person who is not a resident of South Africa. Right. So in this case, I've got a South African company supplying services to a non-resident. Ta-da, I tick the boxes. I'm in Section 11.2L, and I therefore should be able to zero rate it. Okay. The general provisions don't look at where the service is performed or anything else. It looks at who is my consumer of the good. And that would be a non-resident. And as long as I am paying a non-resident, then that's fine. Okay. There are, however, 3 provisos to Section 11.2L, and those 3 provisos fall roughly into: is that service related to a South African immovable property? So, for example, if you've got a UK resident who's looking to have a retirement home in South Africa, you know, the whole traditional European swallows idea. And you as an architect design a home for them that they're going to build on the coast somewhere along the coast of South Africa. Now, in that case, although the person you are transacting with is UK resident and therefore a non-resident, I would have to standard rate the transaction because the service I'm providing is the design of a house to be built in South Africa. It's related to South African immovable property. Therefore, it is going to be standard rated. Same thing if you go and fix a geyser in a house that belongs to a non-resident. You would have to standard rate that because it's related to South African immovable property. Okay. What happens if you fix the car of someone who's currently in South Africa, even though they're non-resident? Then because the car's in country at the time you perform the service, you standard rate it. There are some T's and C's to these, but that's the high-level overview. And last but not least, if the person is in South Africa at the time of service, then you have to standard rate that service as well. So, for example, most common example, if you're a South African hotel and you provide accommodation to someone who's here on holiday, you standard rate your fee irrespective of where the person comes from. You charge VAT at 15%. Okay. So in the context of your question with the internet service providers, absolutely, I'd have no problem. That should be zero rated. Right. If you want more information, interpretation note 42 would be quite relevant to you. The one item I would also please just go and add, okay, is to go and say, please, 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 please be very careful in this scenario because you are providing electronic services. And because you are doing electronic services, it's possible that you may actually have a VAT liability in the country that you're performing the service in, or where your customer is located, even though you've managed to standard rate the transaction from a zero-rated VAT, South African VAT point of view. Okay, so for electronic services, please always remember that you may have a liability on the other end. In the same way, you have a with the electronic services, in the same way that, for example, like Netflix, even though they are based overseas, because their consumers are in South Africa, it meets the definition of an electronic service. Therefore, we are going to have a situation where we will Netflix has to register for VAT in South Africa due to the definition of electronic services. Okay, right. I've seen there's a few comments about question 7 not having a right answer.